Coming up on today's episode of the Video Marketing Toolkit.
But I went independent the year before COVID, so that became an interesting time.
For a while, I want to spend $6,000 on this, all singing, all dancing, Sony camera, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be me and do it.
In my book, so I created it around stories of my own experiences, but I also created a fictional story in the book.
Okay.
To guide people and show them how it can make a real difference. And the story is around this elephant in a boat.
Hello everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to the newest episode of the Video Marketing Toolkit, the podcast where we interview business owners and industry experts and get hints and tips for you so you can put them into your own business at home. My name is Dan Dennis and I'm the host of the podcast, but I also help people get in front of the camera and start using video in their own business as well. Today I speak to Fred Warner. He helps businesses scale and exit. I speak to Fred about his new book, about planning, project management, and how you can implement some of these things that he writes in his book into your life and into your business to help you meet the goals that you want to do. It's a great listen. I can't wait to share with you this episode. Let's get straight stuck into it. Thank you so much, Freddie, for coming down and speaking to me again. You've been on the podcast before, you're back on it again, but for those who don't know who you are, would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. So my name's Fred Warner. I look after business strategy and business guidance in the East Midlands in the UK. And I help companies of all sizes grow, scale and exit.
That's awesome. And you spoke a little bit about your story last time you was on, which I thought was really interesting. So how do you help businesses? Where did your story begin?
So my story in the current form goes back around 6 years. I've been independent 6 years under the guise of Strategy Fred. And that came from having grown through engineering technology companies, Formula One, aerospace, rail, hydrogen fuel cells. So lots of kind of high-tech industries. And I grew through project management, program management and businesses and eventually ended up running companies for other people. And then awesome. I reached a point where I'd ticked all my goals. I'd become the big boss, the director, and I felt I wanted to go and do something different, be independent. So that's when I went independent. But I went independent the year before COVID. So that became an interesting time.
Yeah, what a time to sort of go out there solo into the world. What was that like?
You know what, Daniel, that was tough. I think I actually probably went a bit too easy in 2019. I think it was about May I finally left my official employment.
Yeah.
And I think we had some things going on in our life as well, but I was taking a little bit easy on I've got some savings, I'm going to build up gradually. And then I think by around like the end of the year and into January, February, it was starting to pick up a bit. And then COVID came along and everyone just went, sorry, we're having to stop everything. We're cancelling anything that's not employee or furlough just got canned.
It was just dead in its tracks then.
Yeah. Everything was just dead in the water. All of a sudden, I've got no protections, no furloughs, it was, nothing really. So, and my wife's business, that was shut down by COVID as well. So it was really, a very trying time in a way. But it did also help us, which I can come on to in a second, how we grew out of that. But it was tough.
I can imagine. And for a lot of people out there, like, life just got flipped upside down, really, didn't it? Like, never mind sort of you thinking like just before, like, we're going to make a go of something. And then it literally been like the world being, nope, not going to happen.
Absolutely. You got everybody sort of outside of the obviously tragedies in COVID, people all celebrating at home that they're not having to go to work, they're being paid, they're on, the government's paying everyone's wages and they're all buying beers and hot tubs and garden sunshades
and air fryers and things like that.
And we're like scraping pennies to like get by and get food from Aldi at the time. It was quite a stressful time.
And what did coming out of COVID sort of look like for you? How did you sort of push your business through COVID and get to the other side, basically?
Yeah, well, interestingly, so I called it Strategy Fred originally because I really like business strategy. I knew I loved working at that helicopter view level, making the parts line up, getting the direction sorted out. But I was circling the kind of startups and there's some fantastic things that were going on through the universities and all the like amazing brainchilds of some of the up and coming people. But of course, they don't have any real cash. Then they're all looking for cash themselves. So I got involved with mentoring schemes. And it was things like University of Leicester's sort of business accelerator programs. I was going on, there's one called Northern Max, which was sort of Lincolnshire and Leeds based. And then there was the Bradford Accelerator program. So I basically became a business mentor to SMEs going on these programs. So they'd be government funded programs and I'd be one of the mentors. Okay. And that got me going again from basically being totally ground zero everything wiped out to, okay, I'm now reconnecting with people. So a lot of it's online. I'm helping business owners. They're going on a 10-week program to get their business in better shape, and I'd be their guide once a week talking with them.
So it was like a really good way to you getting back into that space and getting in front of business owners, really, isn't it? Are these these are government funded programs as well?
There are government funded accelerators out there. They come and go depending on a lot of that was EU funding as well. So some of that would have been wrapped up now. But yes, there'll be, if you look around, there's often some kind of accelerator program that an SME owner can go on and get taken through things like how to put a business plan together, how to look at your marketing, how to look at your sales, and give you some really great materials.
That's really interesting. I didn't realise that you started in that sort of area and that those services were even available, to be honest. So what was it sort of like? What was the next steps out of that?
Yeah, so I suppose after that, I've worked in very large companies as well as I was helping smaller companies. And so I was always a bit torn between, am I a big company helper or a little company helper? And so I would get phone calls, and my network served up opportunities to help some very large companies. So I've done the mixture of SMEs between, say, 1 and 10 million turnover, and then companies that are anywhere between 50 million and 100 million, and sometimes part of a wider group. So I was helping a group that was around about 1 billion turnover. They had lots of companies, and so as they buy other companies and bolt them in, I was helping transition some of their systems and their organizational pieces to help them bolt businesses together. And so it's something that I enjoy doing. I can advise people on a strategic level, be it larger on, okay, we're buying that company, and what are the systems, what are the processes, what are the people, how are we going to bolt them together, integrate the companies if that's what they want. Sometimes they don't. And then I'm down sometimes at a smaller level, talking with someone who's on maybe 2, 3, 4 million on how to put a commercial forecast together, how to grow the business, give them the options. And then really in the last couple of years, getting into, well, actually there's loads of people coming up for retirement. They own businesses. They don't have a lot of options on how to sell them other than go to a broker. And a business broker lists you on his or her website, and there's a fee. And they probably sell about 10% of what goes on the website. So most people don't know they're getting involved in something that has a very low chance of them selling. And sometimes
that's really sat there for a while before anything actually happens.
If ever.
Yeah.
If ever. It's not like a house that will eventually sell. A business doesn't have to always sell, so it often gets wound up. Yeah, so that's the sort of range of services. I ended up helping with sort of project and program management, sometimes in big companies, transformational pieces, and then business strategy was tended to be more near the 1 to 10 million turnover companies.
No, that's really interesting. The fact that you've got so much experience at like all these different levels. But I guess what ties it all together is like offering that advice, that experience that you've done for yourself. Like, I guess the fact that you're able, like you say, you're able to offer that advice is because you have experienced at all those different levels before. So it's great that you've been able to sort of package that together into something you enjoy.
Absolutely. And it was when we come on to talk about my new book later on, it was in the depth of all that I created what is 7Q now.
Awesome. So what is 7Q exactly?
So 7Q is 7 questions.
Okay.
And it's 7 questions that will help you master any plan. And that's the name of my book, which I'll plug in a minute.
He's got it right here.
Yeah, I could hold it up and say, there's master any plan in 7 questions. And 7Q represents a way of teaching anybody from any background. It can be the most complex project in the world, putting something on Mars maybe, or it's how to figure out how to go and get your shopping. But 7 questions broken down simply will help you master any plan. And the 7 questions need to be done in a certain order. It's not just a case of ask them and answer them. You start with a specific question, which is actually why. And why are you going to do this plan, this thing, this change? Just like Simon Sinek's book. He's very famous for start with why. He doesn't consolidate the rest of a plan like 7Q does. And then you go through the different questions. And each question can be very deep, actually, and it needs to have specific things in there so that you can be building a business plan, an exit plan, a strategy plan, a marketing plan, a sales plan. it works well for when you're selling someone something and proposing your plan of how you're going to give them a service.
I think that's really interesting, because sometimes I find it really difficult sometimes to explain my ideas or try and explain a plan. I know in my head what I want to do and what I need to do, but it's trying to explain to someone else what that series of events is. So I guess all of your experience, about that you managed to condense that down into a way to help people deliver that, is really cool.
And do you know what? It really makes a difference. When I found that I put it in, so I started using it when I went independent. I'd put it forward in business, and when I created it in around 2014, I got really mixed reactions. And now there's a story behind it. I don't know when you want me to go into the story behind how I created 7Q and when it came. But I got very mixed reactions from people. Some people were very positive, like, this is fantastic. They could see it. And other people were really negative and like very critical. It was like Marmite. It was actually, I called it Simple 7 to start with, the Simple 7. And then I realised the word simple just triggered some people.
Some people really didn't like that.
Like, I'm not simple. You're suggesting I'm simple. You're suggesting that planning is simple. So I changed it. And then I said this brainwave at some point. I was like, 7Q. That's what I'm going to call it.
No, I like 7Q.
7 questions.
So obviously you've created this methodology, 7 questions. And you mentioned that some people really didn't like it and stuff like that. So where did it all start to begin then? Who are these people, and where did you first sort of figure out this?
So I had a mountain biking accident late 2013. I broke my collarbone in 4 places. I still have a plate in there now, and ended up they made a bit of a pickle on the first one. So I had 2 different operations, and I was kind of out of the main ability to get to work and back for about 5 months. And it wasn't so home-based as things are now, where you pick it up. So I had a lot of spare time on my hands, and I was working for a company at the time where I had been looking at ways to implement what they class as stage-gated systems to put products through. And in large corporations, they'll have these stage-gated processes. And I was looking through all this stuff, and I had some spare time at home. So I was in between, in between writing music, playing one-handed piano, recording songs one-handed. I went back to my work and I looked through it all, and I suddenly realised that nearly all of these really complex questions all boiled down to the same few things. And I started to take all the pieces and say, well, that's a why question, and that's a what question. And I worked out, and then I ended up with these 7. Like, actually, the 7 covered everything needed in a plan. And then I'd spent time working out the order of them, and I worked out sort of the brainwave was actually, if it's done in this order, it makes sense. One of the things that inspired me at the time was I was so frustrated that business leaders very rarely know what's going wrong in a plan, other than it's running late and it's costing too much. But they're symptomatic. That's not telling you what's actually going on in the project. There might be a resource issue, which is the who. It might be your approach isn't working, that how you've chosen to solve it isn't working. It might be that what you've decided to do is flawed, or it's too complicated. And the biggest thing I found over and over again is that businesses don't track why they're doing it. They may have had an inkling of why they started, but they seldom track it. And as that's the only reason that you would do something, to not track it. And businesses often, they're ended up hundreds of millions deep in changes and transformations. And no one can even tell you why they started.
Like, why have we done this? Yeah. Why do we even?
It's hilarious, and it can make you cry.
It's actually really interesting, because the last person who I spoke to was Dawn from Equinox, and we were talking about project management, and it aligns really quite well with what you're saying now as well, because she says that businesses will, like you say, get so far down the journey of changing things and affecting things. They're like, where do we even start from? Or that so many people will have a different reason or purpose that they want the plan to work for them. And they get so sort of penned in and narrow-minded that, well, this is my reason. It doesn't matter about anyone else's sort of input or reasoning, that you kind of, you lose that bigger picture. So this would be it seems like a really valuable tool to make it clear to everybody, so people don't get confused and get the wires crossed and things like that.
Really, really great examples. And in my book, so I created it around stories of my own experiences, but I also created a fictional story in the book.
Okay.
To guide people and show them how it can make a real difference. And the story is around this elephant in a boat. And there's a picture of this elephant in a boat looking pretty miserable, and a woman trying to, well, she's meant to be trying to move the boat, but she's bailing water out of the boat because the boat's kind of sinking. And it represents a lot of projects and changes, and it represents a lot of business plans, which is that you think you've got a plan, but it's not really working. And that you go through the 7 questions, and I make up a fictional story about why they're in the boat, what they're doing, where they're doing it, how they're doing it, who they're doing, who's going to do it, when's it meant to happen, and how much is all this meant to cost. And really, when you break it down in the example I give, it's that they've chosen the wrong scope. The what, because people and project management focuses on scope really heavily. Know what you're doing and just deliver that. And I disagree, and I preach that actually the scope is flexible. It should be dynamic, and it needs to flex and change. And you focus on why you're doing something. And if you track a project by the why, and the project leaders get taught, because they have to be taught and sometimes re-taught, to stop focusing on what needs to be done and start focusing on why you need to get this project finished.
Yeah.
And in the book, it talks through the story of how just a simple change to the scope, which is actually just removing a single word, totally changes the outcome of that everybody's day kind of thing.
That seems really interesting. And I think it's definitely something, like you said, that can be applied to lots of different things, like in really just simplifying the task or simplifying the message. And just, I guess that's why, was it originally sort of like the 7 simple questions as well, because it just makes it easier to understand for everyone.
Absolutely. You nailed it there, Daniel. So it was what my inspiration and like my moment, like my epiphany was, it doesn't need to be as complicated. And planning is this, if you say to people, can you make a plan? Nearly everyone will say, of course I can make a plan. You say, write one down then. And because I guess I've got this, I took planning very seriously for a very long time and was very interested in the subject. So I have a kind of depth of knowledge in it, lots of different project management methodologies, ways that companies do it. And I can easily show someone that their plan probably has some great big flaws in it. And I realized actually with these 7 questions, it doesn't need to be that complex anymore. If people can put down maybe their bit of ego about, actually you probably don't need, you can admit that you don't know as much about planning as you need to.
Yeah.
Learn this method, and it helps people communicate, because I was able, even large corporations, I can sit down with a team and say, okay, you guys and girls, you're all arguing about a how question. This is all talking about how we're going to solve it. But you're missing out the big red herring here is that the what isn't sorted, or maybe that the why hasn't been clarified by the leadership team, and that the when you're being asked to do it in is unreasonable. And so that's driving these different behaviors. And through that, you can break down silos. So I've had, in large companies, teams working together much better and communicating, because there's this simple language that no matter how technical one person is, you teach them, when you're talking about this stuff, that's how. If you're talking about that stuff, that's who. Make sure you're being clear on that. And this other person, with this methodology, you feel more empowered to challenge this person who's got lots of technical knowledge, and they normally talk you down because of all their technical knowledge, but it doesn't mean that they've got a good plan either.
I think that sounds really empowering, actually, because there's probably a lot of situations, especially probably in larger organisations, when words are getting flown around, technical knowledge, well, we can't do this because of this. And then there'll be people that will probably be sitting there and thinking, that doesn't sound right. Like, that's like, I feel like I'm right, but I don't have the confidence to say it. Yeah. So in a sense, this methodology probably could give people the confidence to actually stand up and challenge, like you say, challenge that technical knowledge that probably doesn't seem quite right.
And you know what? It also goes into roles and responsibilities. So again, there's a lot of depth behind 7Q when I implement it. But let's say, for an example, people are arguing about something, like, no, we can't do this. We should do this. We shouldn't do that. And okay. And I'd be like, okay, this is all a how thing. We're arguing about the how. But let's just be clear on who owns the why, who owns the what, and who owns the where. Because they're the first 3 questions. That's the ask. And often it will be taking away the keys, I call it, from one person, saying you no longer have the authority to dictate whether or not the why is okay. Because maybe your role is to support the business in its wishes, not to dictate to the business what it can do. So you might, sometimes it's taking away from, say, it might be an IT director, and saying you don't own the why, the business case, the reasons for doing something. You own the how and the who. That's your domain.
Their job is to get like a certain task done rather than the full scope of the business.
It's kind of, but it's their role to support the business's needs, not tell it what it can and can't have.
Okay.
And so I've seen it where, particularly in, say, the IT space, an IT director or CIO gets quite strong and powerful, and all of a sudden they own the business cases for doing IT change. But they shouldn't own the business case, the why. It should be that the business owns the business case and the IT team are delivering it.
Almost putting the hands back into the control of the right people who need it.
Yes.
Have you got an example of something like that that's really sort of surface level, just for maybe a small business owner could take into consideration?
Yeah, so if we go into something like, you've got somebody in a member of staff in a company and they are pushing, and we want this system and pushing it in and we want that, and it's going to do this and it's going to save money. And as the business owner, sometimes you don't feel like you necessarily understand everything that person's pushing to do. With 7Q, I teach that the why you're doing it, what you're doing, and where you're doing it is owned by the sponsor, the person that's paying, and the person that needs to see the benefit.
Okay.
And that the team member who wants to get stuff done, they get to own how you're doing it, who does it, when it's going to happen, how much it's going to cost.
Right.
So I create this division line, and I teach both sides. These are sponsor owned. So if you're a small business owner, sometimes you can kind of get the control back a bit of thinking, well, I don't really understand why we're doing it. Well, you're the business owner.
You should be the one in control.
That's okay. You have to understand. And if you don't understand why, then there's a flaw. So let's get you there. And then you need to agree the scope, what it is. But you own that. That's your role as the small business owner. You don't get that dictated to you. Where is it going to be done? Is it in a system? Like, is it a HubSpot or is it in a location? Where is it going to happen? And then when you've agreed that, the person who's been pushing, often you de-stress them because they've been trying to run the business case, the benefits and the scope, and they've been owning it. Yeah. And you take it all away from them and say, it's okay, right? You can negotiate some of these things, but once we've got this agreed, then you just own the how we're doing it, which is all the work breakdown, the approach, the tasks that need doing, who the team. Is it outsourced? Is it people inside? When can you get it done by with those resources? Because when is dependent on who you're using, which might have to come afterwards. And who you're using is dependent on how you've decided to solve it. So you can't know you can't decide who you're using until you've decided how you're going to solve it. Because a different how would lead to a different who. And then a different who, depending on availabilities, would lead to a different when. And a different when leads to a different cost.
Sort of putting in the right questions in the right order so people understand their roles. I think that is probably a really crucial point, isn't it? Because I can only imagine the amount of when a project is underway and people don't understand the roles that they have to be in, like that's when mistakes are made and people are all over the place and things aren't correctly being done for the right reasons. And it's just pulling people back together again.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's tracking it then and saying once you've gone into the delivery phase, saying, well, who's tracking it? Because often you get a when. And that's often a lot of all people track, even in very large companies. And you say, well, obviously you need to track when and how much, the cost. But you also need to track, are we on track with our why? Our purpose.
Yeah.
Because if it turns out you said we need to put this system in because it's going to save our business $100,000, and then everybody's busy running around achieving a what, and then it turns out at some point that was a miscalculation and you're now not going to save any money, then you need to make a decision. Do you want to carry on?
Yeah.
And businesses often don't, and owners, they don't realize that they're not empowered with the current methods they're using to think, actually, by focusing on why I'm doing this, it now makes me think, I don't know if I want to carry on. Because I can be a project killer as well as a project starter.
You can also be like, why are we doing this? We don't need this being done. Let's get rid of it. I can really relate to that as well because I've spoken to this about before probably, but I have going into CRM systems. So I had a CRM system for a bit, but then it kind of I was like, this is, I'm setting up the CRM system. I guess this was my what though, because I wasn't addressing why I was doing the CRM system. I was just doing, I need one for the sake of needing one. And then I'm like, well, now I feel like I'm just spending more time logging my tasks twice on my Google Calendar and my CRM system. I'm putting my contacts from my phone into the system and just all this stuff, when I was never really addressing the why, which was like, to make my life easier. And by ultimately doing all of these things twice, I was making my life less easier by doing it. So yeah, I could have took the initiative to ask myself the question first, is it actually going to be beneficial, rather than doing everything else first and then looking for the why afterwards.
Really, really great point and a great example. And if you were being specific about your why, because a why can be woolly, and because there's a lot of rhetoric around start with what and then tell people why. What are you doing and why are you doing it? There's a lot of that. And I disagree. It's why are you doing something?
And what are you
Get
doing?
that really, really clear, because then you can come up with 5 different ways of choosing what. Come up with different scenarios. How can I solve this why? But make it measurable. Where are you looking to save? In your case, am I looking to save time, increase leads? And if I am looking to increase leads, how many buy? What sort of system would I need? Sometimes I've spoke to particularly small business owners when they come across my path, and they'll say, well, we're doing this, we're putting the CRM in, and I'm saying, but you're in a B2B space, so you're not going to have many clients.
Yeah.
Probably going to be less than 20. Why do you need a CRM for less than 20 clients? You could use an Excel spreadsheet.
And that was ultimately I was much better with my spreadsheets, and that was ultimately the easier way of me doing it, rather than investing all that time to set something up I didn't actually need. No, I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of people will benefit from reading more into that methodology. So that's the 7 questions. What's the book then?
So the book came middle of 2024. I started writing, and it came from I'd been given an opportunity to put project management principles and get a grip of a very large company's, a very renowned brand in around the world, actually, in getting their digital projects under control. And I decided to push my 7Q method in, because I'd been playing with it and using it in businesses. And I thought, right, this is a big company. I'm going to put 7Q into it. And so
this was like your big moment to be like, this is what I've been thinking the whole time. Let's see if it actually works, sort of thing.
Let's put it on, let's get it going in on scale.
That's awesome.
And so I put it into this company, and we went through setting up what's classed as a project management office, which is really sort of a central function that manages and oversees lots of projects going on in a business. And we use the 7Q method. So instead of it being traditional project management, like what is it, sort of scope, cost and time, I was starting with, let's have a clear why for everything, a business ideation stage gate. If you've not got a clear why, no project starts. And of course that comes as a real shock, because people are used to starting projects. Well, we've decided we're doing this, we've decided we're doing that, but why?
Why?
Well, I don't know. And he doesn't know, or she doesn't know. It's right. Well, we don't stop. Every project that's not got a clear why doesn't start.
I think that's something so simple, but it is like, I bet the amount of projects where you do just start doing it.
Yeah, and so you're creating a funnel system. And some people don't enjoy it, but this is all paperwork. If you can't explain why something should be done, it's not all about money. Maybe not. So explain the benefits.
Yeah.
What benefit will the business get from doing this?
Why are we doing it?
And so that's the first gate. You've got to get past why, and somebody needs to agree. And then the next one was right. What that saves is they were overloading their technical resources with brain. We've had this idea, we've had that idea, and these poor people are just being swamped with this idea and having to scope it up, spec it out, do all this stuff. And as soon as I put that in place, well, you've now got this buffer.
Yeah, the filter starts straight away.
Now your technical resources aren't quite as overloaded as they were. And now the only stuff coming through is the stuff that seems to make commercial sense or business sense to do. So now they go into the planning phase, and you say, right, team, we need to now go through what is it that we think needs to be done, where are we going to do it, how are we going to do it, who do we need to do it, when are you going to do it by, and how much do you think it's all going to cost? And I would push the people with the ideas to also say, well, what do you think it should cost? So I call this an expectation. I extract an expectation out of people, even though they always say, I don't know at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's amazing how I
bet that's the first thing everyone ever says.
Well, I don't know. I'm not an expert. And I go, okay, so can this cost £1 million? Well, of course not. Okay. Do you think it should cost a £5? Well, no, it normally costs 10 grand. Right. So is 10 grand. Can it cost 50 grand? No. I mean, where are we at? This can be, so we're talking 10 to 40 grand. Okay.
So all of a sudden you've gone from someone who says, I don't know, to actually got quite a specific ballpark.
Yeah, we've got an expectation of how much it needs to cost.
Yeah.
When are you hoping this is going to happen by? Well, I mean, okay, can it be a month? Does it need to be 4? Can it be 6 months, 12 months? Oh, I need it in 3 months. Okay. So now we've got an expectation. Can the team deliver something up in 3 months? And you start extracting out of a person. It's amazing how it's all locked in there. You extract it out and then you give it to a team and go, can you match what they want doing, knowing why they want to do it with their expectations? And we started that process, and that started on scale. And all of a sudden, because I'm having to retrain the leadership in what to expect from people serving up projects, and retrain the projects people in what to serve up. And I also took people with pretty much minimal project management background. They'd never really led projects before.
Yeah.
And using 7Q, I can have pretty much anybody leading a project in some way, in a professional way, very quickly, without having to do in-depth project management qualifications. So that really helped the business because they didn't have time.
It's a very quick, efficient, easy way to just make things better straight away, really.
Absolutely. And then some projects were getting stuck in planning. Why are they not coming out of planning? Because they couldn't come up with a plan that equaled back to meeting the why. So they never succeeded in going out of planning. And what that meant was, this was frustrating. Well, we've had this idea. It seems like a really good idea. We know why we want to do it. Give me a good plan. They never did planning before. They just started. And then they would fail and fail and fail and slip and slide and cost and cost. Whereas now they weren't even getting to start. We just need a plan. Can we figure out how we're going to do this? And so then projects would often get stopped because they never started.
And that ultimately is like why they're not starting, because you probably didn't need them in the first place.
It was, yeah. And it turns out actually, and a good example of one maybe in this company was, we've had this idea that if we make these changes in our logistics and operations, it's a bit like Amazon on a smaller scale, or some of their logistics. It's like a Willy Wonka factory with conveyor belts and boxes moving everywhere and stuff popping out. And if we make these changes, we think we'll save £800,000 a year. Fantastic. And they've got a budget of, say, 100 grand a year or 200 grand a year. But then you start working through and testing the plan and testing the why, and quickly the why started to crumble. It started off at 800k a year. By the time we tested it a few times, it was actually nearer 200. Now the project started going up. This is in the planning stage, not in the execution stage, which is normally where it goes wrong. And the project was going to be 200 or 300 grand to do it. So now you've got to spend 200 or 300 grand to save 200 grand.
Which then ultimately, the fact that it costs so much already in the planning phase, or that you've discovered that it would cost so much, it makes the whole reason of saving that money pointless, because you've just spent it anyway on trying to save that money.
And then the beauty is that team don't go and execute that project, which actually turned out was never going to make it or save any money anyway. So now you can use them for a project that turns out it is going to make or save you some money. So then your business is going to grow, because you're putting your money and resources into what's going to give you opportunity rather than things that you've just not thought through.
And you know what? I've been sort of, while we've been going through it, I've been trying to think as well in the back of my head, like, what's something that I could, again, easily relate to something like this. And it literally sings to me about cameras and buying new cameras for me, because for ages in my head I was like, right, I need to get this new Sony camera. I've been on Canon for a while, but I want to spend $6,000 on this all singing, all dancing Sony camera, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be me and do it. And then I started to think, why am I spending that much money? And I've probably done this sort of in my head without obviously knowing it's a structure or knowing it's like a methodology. But I've been like, why do I actually want to spend this $6,000? And instead, that's when I decided to invest it in the podcast equipment, which sort of I judged to be a much more of a wise decision, because I could see there was money to be made in the outcome. Whereas if I bought this fancy camera, in reality, I can't really charge my clients more because I've got a fancier camera, because it's still going to be the same product. And it's like the only beneficiary was going to be me. So I can definitely see how in every decision I can make in the future, by applying these 7 steps, it will allows you to think about things a little bit more. It gives you the scope just to digest things a little bit more. Like whether it's like you say, working with big companies in project management, or if it's just me buying a camera or investing in a car or a new transport or something like that. Like, I think it's actually really cool how you can use it in both of those worlds and circumstances.
Do you know, that's really true. And I'd like it if 7Q did get used by everyday people, just knowing it. They're not having to give me anything in return for it, just learning it, learning the methodology and thinking, this helps me. This helps me in my day world. And there's two types that I've noticed. And let's say the founders and SME owners that come along to some of the workshops we've been running in 7Q. There's those that are generally great with ideas. They know why they want to do stuff, and they're all about getting a new idea. But the 7Q method makes them realize that they're kicking stuff off with just no plan at all in place, and that's why it's generally failing and frustrating them. And
they're just going for it and then not thinking about it, and then
they're doing the classic thing of we can make all this money, but we haven't really thought about a plan, and then we've just started, and then it's like we just carry on and carry on.
When do we stop? When do we change? Yeah.
And then so they're the one kind. They're the kind of the ideas people, and the other kind are the people that suddenly realize I'm doing stuff without a clear why. I'm down in the detail. I'm down in the what am I doing and how am I doing it and who do I get to do it? And I'm busy.
You're not thinking about it.
And they're not seeing, and it's bringing those two sides together to say there are people that are great with ideas and their whys, and there are people that are great at the execution and pushing stuff. But then they all need to be aligned.
Everyone needs to be singing and working together. And as well as people, again, relating it back to sort of like a solo guy like myself, it's like those different parts of your brain, using those different parts of your brain that is, the decision maker, the doer, and making them work together, that they're not contradicting each other or working against each other. No, this seems really interesting, actually, how many different ways you can interpret it into your own life.
And do you know what? It would be great to see people using 7Q for their life plans, because something that I am passionate about is people knowing their purpose and being able to follow their passions as well. And sometimes it's even a challenge to do 7Q in my own life plan, but because it sometimes when you say to yourself, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to work out my personal why, not a business's why, not a business plan's why, my personal, why am I going to do anything? Why are you doing your wonderful podcast?
Yeah. And what is the reason why we're doing it? And is it the correct way of doing it and things like that?
Yeah. And you work out, why are you doing everything? Because that becomes your, and there's something I do in business for small business owners that really helps them is people talk about vision and mission. You've probably heard that a few times. And I think it's very confusing. And a lot of businesses, I actually see a lot of businesses that have it fairly confused. And what I teach people is your vision is your why at a top level. And your mission is your what at a top level. So when you read someone's mission now and you think that's your what, and you read it and you think, I can't see what you do from your mission, it sounds really woolly. That's too woolly. Your vision can be a little woolly. We want to be making the world a better place. We want to save everybody's lives. And they're the kind of visions people often end up with.
But the mission is what you're doing.
What is it you're fundamentally doing about it?
No, yeah, I like that.
Bring about the vision.
Because sometimes you hear about, obviously you read like mission statements and things like that, and it's all, and it is very, I think woolly is the perfect word for it, in that they kind of talk about what they're doing, but are they actually doing it? And then, but yeah, I think that's a good way of sort of dissecting the two and separating the two out.
And I see many companies, very large companies, they've paid a lot of money for their vision and mission of someone, but I'd say a lot of the practitioners out there putting those into companies, they haven't figured out how to separate those two very well.
Yeah, they are just ultimately sometimes end up being words rather than actually what the company does.
Yeah. I mean, a company I helped recently, and I did point out to them that your vision and mission statement say the same thing in different order.
It's just rearranged.
It's two vision statements. Yeah. You don't have a mission statement.
No, that should be really. I think that leaves a lot to think about in my own business as well, because I have very much been sort of just started out running and gunning, going as along, thinking of things as I go. So it makes me think that when you get to that little bit more responsibility under your belt, it's time to start thinking about these things a little bit more, put in a bit more planning, because with more responsibility, there's probably more risk and stuff like that. Obviously, while you're just starting out, sometimes it's kind of like if you don't have much to spend, you're just doing whatever, then you just go whatever. But yeah, once you start investing money and actually spending money and putting time and effort in, probably best start to think about it a little bit more.
It is. If I was to take you, for example, Daniel, and say, if we talked about your why, like why are you doing Daniel Dennis Media, Daniel Dennis Podcasting? Why do you do it?
It's a difficult question. Literally, it's such a difficult question to ask, but it's ultimately, I'm doing it because I enjoy it and I love to do it. And and it's better than sort of sitting in an office and doing something else for something else for someone else. So my why is very much personable, I think, to me, because I love helping people and I love video. So it's sort of a good combination of the two.
And in the why, I teach people that you put all of the money in goes in why. How much is all about money out. People get that a bit confused. So if you were to build your why and say, so you're looking for independent, to be your independent owned business, that you're really passionate about doing media and videography and podcasting, and that you'd start to say, well, in your why, how many clients would you ideally have? And you might say, and you probably have a number in your head, ideally how many clients would
probably like just like those 5 to 10 solid good.
Brilliant.
Clients.
So you'd like 5 to 10. There's a good plug for you here, but it's like 5 to 10 solid clients looking at you for podcasting, doing their podcasting. So that goes in your why, and then you start to build your why with some specifics as well as the vision. Start to get some specifics in there, so that that will come out in a monetary format based on what you're charging people on packages.
Yeah,
and that starts to build your why out. And then the beauty of it next is when you're saying, I'm thinking about doing this or that, which is a what, you hold it up to your why.
Right. Okay.
And then you look at your why and go, well, I've written down, this is my why. And I tell people, you can change your why. It's yours. You can change your business why. But until you do, don't do anything that doesn't fit it. So if someone's like vision is, and let's say I came across a company, their vision is to sort of save the environment, yet they are selling services and products that are polluting the environment.
When they hold it up, it's going to be like, these kind of contradict each other, like they're not
really
working.
Match.
Yeah.
If you're saying that you are saving the environment whilst polluting the environment, there's a kind of, there's an issue there.
And I think that's really interesting as well, because it's kind of like, again, going back to what my vision that I said a minute ago about working for myself sort of under my own terms, I've had it in the past and recently where I've been working with clients and I've not felt like I'm working for myself and they're for my terms. And I feel like the relationship's a little bit rocky. And I guess if I would have took that situation and held it up to my vision, a lot earlier on, I would have left that client and we would have parted that relationship a long ago, rather than me sticking through it just for the sake of thinking, well, I need to do this for money sort of thing. I didn't think back, look, why hold it to the reason I'm actually doing this, and then made a decision on that part. So yeah, I think you can use it quite a lot, not just in business, in your life as well. I think Absolutely. It is actually a really important sort of methodology behind it.
And that's something else that I help businesses with in all shapes and sizes, is by using the methodology of the way my brain works, is that what we're deciding to do this, and it might be we're deciding to try and buy this company over here, or it might be something little like we're going to go and start selling this extra different product, or we're trying to move into this region or this sector. We're selling in, I don't know, let's call it leisure, and we're suddenly going to try and send to care homes or just something totally random.
Like, but why are we doing that?
Why didn't? Does that meet your why? Actually, no, it doesn't, does it? And then you start to question it. And then they suddenly realise that it's a magpie syndrome. It's like something shiny, Like there's so many things.
That greed, we
chase.
just want to do it. We just want to sell it because we can, sort of thing. But like, why are you actually doing that? No, I think it's really interesting. So is this your first book?
It is. So this is my first book. This copy is yours, actually.
No way.
And I've written you a little.
That's so much. I love that.
I've written him a little note in the front.
I appreciate that. I'm definitely going to give it a read. It's brilliant.
No, I hope you read it and enjoy it. It's quite an easy read, and it really is. So there's your.
Thank you so much.
And it is my first book, and it's a book I've had in the background.
I love the colours as well, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the branding I chose for. I designed the cover myself and everything as well, and the logo.
Simplicity is the keynote of all true elegance, Coco Chanel. No, I love that. Thank you very much. I will definitely give that a read. Obviously, you mentioned as well about workshops. So how does that tie into the book? What are the workshops all about?
So we've launched workshops to help founders, business leaders, solopreneurs, freelancers, and they can come along to a workshop. And we've done a couple of testers, and we're going to do some more testers. But the workshop it teaches you the 7Q method in a really fun, engaging way, and we get people talking together. And then really you can leave. We'll guide you through creating your first 7Q one-page plan. And that's something that's gone down actually better than I ever thought it would.
Awesome.
And also I got the feedback again, and I've had it before, which is my 7Q one-page plan. let's call it a business plan, an exit plan, whatever it is, the way I construct a one-page plan, most people find it just totally, I can see my whole plan on one page.
Yeah.
I don't need to read a whole document anymore. You might need
It's
some.
all there, laid out in front of you.
It's all laid that, and I. So they get that. So they come along. They feel pumped up. Get back in. Get realigned on. I see that and different people probably identify different areas of their way they work that I get focused in this area too much, and and it's the classic people going in and saying, I start a plan focusing on who's going to do it, and someone else starts a plan on, they're focusing in on the tasks, and someone else is starting a plan focusing on the money, and everyone's different, right? So you teach them a common structure, and that's really fantastic. So we're doing that, and then we're going to follow up for the workshops to then some business accelerators to say, actually, let's get some businesses together and let's put them on a kind of 7-week, like power charged.
Put this into action,
Let's get it
all
going.
the other stuff with it as well, and sort of get it going.
Yeah.
I think that sounds really good, because sometimes I know as well, again, working on my own, you kind of get all these ideas in. It's hard to process the ideas. Then you end up with like 16 different documents with like 3 different visions on all these different documents. So yeah, bringing everything together and simplifying it, condensing it, I think it would actually be really helpful, because my Google Drive is just full of different bits all over the place. Or my Apple Notes, I'll just write things in my Apple Notes and I'll be like, yep, I remember that's there, and that's the most current version of that. And it just disappears within like a few days, like to the rest of the sea.
If there's any consolation, you're a human, and I do it as well. I'm guilty of it. And I think, again, sometimes I have to remind myself to use my own methodology when I'm also going into creative mode. And you're a creative, right? So you're thinking, and your brain runs over here and your brain runs over there. And then you look back and look at a document from 3 months ago and thought, oh, I already did it.
Yeah, I've actually already done this.
Why am I here again?
Yeah.
And often that is then it's that consistent execution. It's just sticking with I've got my plan, print it. I often encourage people, like, laminate it. Once you've got your 1-page plan, laminate that, stick it on your wall,
Have it
every
there,
day.
right in front of you.
Yeah. And always ask yourself, am I focused on my why? What can I do this week that's going to get me further on my journey?
Is the why? Would you say that that's a big focus of 7Q? Is that ultimately, in a way, why you've done it? Was it to help you to discover the why, or was it sort of the bigger picture than that?
So no, yes and no, but no, why isn't the fundamental. So Simon Sinek has his book, which is Start With Why, which I've read after creating 7Q, and I thought, well, this is fantastic. This guy's speaking literally the same language as me. I'm like, oh my gosh. But no, 7Q is really around helping people have a complete plan and saying, but why is the cornerstone. So if your why isn't being delivered, stop. But the rest of the plan, the questions are needed to go through, what is it you're delivering, your specifications, where are you doing it? Are you doing it locally? Are you doing it online? Are you doing it in Europe? Are you going to the Middle East? That needs defining before you then figure out how you're going to do it, who you're going to get to do it, when that can happen, and like how much is that all going to cost you?
Yeah.
With how much always being money out, not money in. The money in always goes in the why. And so I use that as then the basis to help people deliver and execute plans, because I'm a bit of a planning specialist, if you like, in that way. So yes, I would say, in a short answer,
it's not always about the why, but the why is a big cornerstone in it as well.
And it's sometimes it's like, maybe the cost is running over on a thing you're planning to do, and it's taking ages. And you zone in and you say, we've got a how problem. But because we've got a how problem, the when and the cost, the how much you're going over, that's affecting our why. Because, if you were putting on a concert and it was in the middle of August and you say Elton John's flying in, we know why we're doing it. We know what we've got to do. We've got to build a stadium and get everyone there and put the fencing in. And we know where we've got to do it. It's in, I don't know, Milton Keynes, for example. Right, how are we going to do it? Right, and you break it all down into pieces of work. Who are we going to get to do it? And gradually, as it starts going on, that it might be running over cost, but who cares? We've got to carry on and do it because Elton John's arriving. But if it turns out no one knows how to do it, you've got quite a big issue, because when it has to be done is fixed. It's Elton John's plane's going to be arriving.
He's going to be landing.
Yeah, if there's no stage for him to go onto,
that's it.
You've got it. And so it's then driving back and going, right, we've got a how problem, we've got to solve it, because when is like rock solid.
And identifying where the problems are. Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I think that the fact that it ties into the workshops can help a lot of people. And I think that it, like, not just in business, I think in life as well, it's got its opportunities. And in business, big business, small business, those sole traders as well, I think everyone can sort of benefit from it. What does the future look like for the book and 7Qs?
It's an interesting question, one I'm having a lot of planning on at the moment. So some of the next early phases are really helping people get onto the workshops and onto business accelerators. I am planning to do some kind of AI 7Q that can help people online. So it's almost like speaking with me. It's programmed with the whole of the 7Q. It's programmed with my disposition on how to solve a plan. And that will be something that I'm sort of looking to release at some point. So that's exciting. And then really looking at a range of products and services around that to help people. It's all about helping people.
Yeah.
So in the next few months, it's all about workshops and accelerator programs.
Thank you so much for coming to speak to me about your book, methodology, and what you got going on. We have got a little bit of a new thing that I want to try with you now, and I did speak to you about a little bit earlier. I'm going to put to you 20 questions that you need to try and answer within a minute, which is very difficult. I think it's something like 3 seconds a question, and I might not even be able to read the questions out that quick enough. But the idea is you need to prove your knowledge, put your knowledge to the test in business, planning, communication, and about cars, because we know that you're a massive fan of cars. And I'm going to see how many questions you can get in that 1 minute.
Sounds intimidating.
And I did ambush this on him today. It was just the first thought that I thought of today. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm probably just going to put a timer on my phone and run through it. But we're going to do it live and we're going to see how it turns out. So, hey Siri, put a 1 minute timer on. So, what does ABS stand for in car safety systems?
Something braking system.
Anti-lock braking system. What does SWOT stand for in business planning?
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat.
Which company makes Mustang?
Ford.
What's a Gantt chart used for?
Project plans.
What does GTI stands for in the VW Golf GTI?
Was it a Grand Tourer injection?
What does KISS principle in communication stand for?
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. What was the year the Tesla Model S first released?
2014.
2012. What was the difference between goals and objectives?
A goal is something you're trying to achieve. An objective is something smaller that you break it down into.
Yeah, I'll go with that one. Where's Volvo from?
Sweden.
What does SMART stands for in goal setting?
Specific, measurable, actual. I've forgotten the last two.
You just out of time there. It was specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. I actually think you did really well on that one. They were pretty easy questions. And I love the fact that the Mustang one came in, and I didn't actually realise that you had a Mustang till you
Universal.
saw it. So, like, ChatGPT knew before I did. But
Fred Warner, he talks about his Mustang on ChatGPT.
Yeah. You just sit there adding it in, making sure it knows it.
I'm running a theory in my head that's like, if we're all programming stuff into ChatGPT and the knowledge is owned by OpenAI, you might be able to influence what ChatGPT says to other people by telling it stuff.
Yeah, true. Because there's been loads of stories as well where people, I'm pretty sure someone like sued OpenAI because ChatGPT was giving everybody false information about them, that this father had like killed his kids and when his kids had tragically died, and there was this big news story about it. And I was like, this is wild. But imagine if like it was just putting out false information about yourself like
That's
that.
scary, isn't it?
Yeah, like anything could like it could grab it, any kind of fake news, really, couldn't it? Really, but that's a whole other podcast episode to go on to about. I think that you got there though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 20, which I think was good.
Yeah, we didn't read all the 20 questions.
No, we didn't get through the whole 20.
So is it how many out of the ones you read?
I think I read 10, so you got 8 out of 10.
That's not bad.
I think that was really good.
That's definitely a pass.
And what was the KISS principle? Keep it simple, stupid. I never heard of that one before.
Yeah, I've not done it for years, but it's don't overcomplicate stuff. So it's all about KISS is like just the more simple, and a bit like this in a way, that the more simple you can make stuff, don't overcomplicate it because it helps people get stuff done quicker.
Okay. Awesome. No, that's brilliant. Well, that was the very first time round, and I'll put you on the leaderboard, 8 out of 10 in 1 minute. I think you did very well there. But yes, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to me. I really appreciate it. Second time on the podcast as well. And I think it was another brilliant episode.
Well, thank you.
Do you have any final words for the audience out there before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I think if you really focus on why you're doing something and then wrap a plan around it, the next big thing is to consistently apply it. And that's one of my own, failings at times, I would say. And the reason I help people, I think I was really good at some of the things I did because I focused on why. I would meet people and understand what they were looking for. And then I'd find a way to achieve that rather than what was written on paper. And that got good results. So keep focused. But where in my own personal life, particularly if you're a solopreneur, small business owner, and as a small business owner myself, it's consistently applying what is good practice. It's really hard, and you go into these different stages and you get really busy and you lose this and like you say, you probably come up, you put your head above water, you take a moment, have a breath, look around you and think, oh crap, I'm not doing all these other things I thought I was going to do.
And I think that's the key bit, taking a moment, get your head above the water, reevaluate and compare to that mission. I love that aspect that you mentioned there, and I think that's something really valuable I'm going to personally take away from this. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
You can find all of Fred's and my information in the episode description below. Follow us on LinkedIn. We always want to take the conversation further. And thank you so much for watching this episode. I look forward to seeing you again soon. See you later, guys. Awesome.